Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. It is with immense pleasure that I welcome you all here to today's edition of Rabanda Talks, where we'll speak about medical technology and entrepreneurship. I extend a special welcome to our director, Dr. Sunil Rai, our faculty members from both the campus, our dear students, and of course, Mr. Jerry Sanders. Well, Rabanda Talks is a platform for our students to have an enriching and meaningful dialogue with speakers who come from accomplished sectors in their own professions. Today, we have a person amongst us who is a man of many faces. If the League of Extraordinary Gentlemen would exist for real, I'm sure he would most definitely have a place in it. Why, you ask? Well, hold your breath and be ready to be mesmerized. Mr. Jerry Sanders is a former Navy SEAL from the US. He has he's gone on to open the San Francisco Science, a medical technology company. He has a law degree and a postgraduate degree in German social economics from Germany. He belongs to the NYC Bar Associations. He is a faculty of the Oxford University's SET Graduate School of Business. He is also a famous case in the Harvard Business School case study on entrepreneurship. And now he's the chairman and CEO of SkyTran. Well, you say that the world is not enough, right? So is the case with Mr. Jerry Sanders. He is the advisor of the Paris Chamber of Commerce and Industry. He is the US State Department accredited honorary consul for the Republic of Haiti. So what does a man do who is a soldier, a lawyer, an honorary consul, a teacher, when he is free? I tell you what, he makes wine in his own vineyard. That's right, Mr. Jerry Sanders has his very own vineyard, the Chenet Vintage Vineyards. So ladies and gentlemen, give a big round of applause for a man who made it. I would ask Vanessa to come over and hand over to your class, please. I would like our director, Dr. Sunil Rai, to come over here and grace us with a few words.
Jerry, just hang on. Okay. So wait, here, I'll give this to you. Thank you very much. Why I didn't ask Jerry to go is because I don't want to be between you and what Jerry has to tell us. Just 2-3 thoughts I will share with you. What you are doing, SkyTran and this kind of vehicle, I come from the city and I have been in that situation with one of those cars. And many a times in Mumbai, just behind it you see the stock exchange building. So we are really, really waiting to get something like your innovation coming in helping us out. I have been only as a child in our epics, Mahabharata. You heard of Mahabharata? So in Mahabharata, they talked about those kind of vehicles which you have already made a reality. So thanks for reliving Mahabharata for us. And the other thing that I have common with Jerry is that, of course, he likes Navy SEAL. And I'm from the Indian Navy. Oh, okay. So I'm Indian Navy commander. The height difference tells us the difference between the Indian Navy and the US Navy SEAL. So now we are really looking forward to your thoughts in this place. It's the first program in the country which is the healthcare management program, one of its own kind. And you have come here at the beginning of this particular program, and there could be no other way of launching this kind of a program in the country. So welcome, Jerry, and we look forward to it. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Okay, so my dad gave me these few hints on making good speech. Be sincere, be brief, and be seated. So without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Jerry Sanders.
Thank you for spending your time, and I will give you as much time as you want, and I'll talk to you all after class if you want. I find this one of the most rewarding parts of what I do is the opportunity to talk to people, share ideas. I always come away with this with more than I brought into it. So I look forward to this exchange. The introduction was great, and the gentleman, your name is? Ashish, yeah. So he told you about all of the different things I did in life. My first job was actually driving a taxi cab in New York City. And to this day, that was the hardest job I ever had. So whenever you take a taxi, tip your driver well. He or she's working very hard. But what I think you may have gleaned from this introduction was that I'm a person who could not keep a job, right? I mean, that's the bottom line, is I always got fired from any job I had. And it's amusing today, it's not amusing when it happens, but the reason is that some people are like sand in an oyster. How does the oyster produce a pearl? There's sand, it irritates the pearl, and that irritation causes the oyster to secrete fluid, which eventually becomes a pearl, and that pearl is very valuable. But someone or something has to be that sand that starts the process. Corporations, big companies, typically do not like the sand, right? They want peace and quiet. They want to, typically in big companies especially, where it's very bureaucratic, the institution wants what we call institutional peace. They want everybody to come to work and be quiet and not come up with new ideas and not be innovative because it threatens everyone else in the company. And so don't be disheartened if you come to a company and you find that you're irritating everyone else. It simply means you're an entrepreneur. So with that thought, I'm going to be jumping around a little bit because I do continue to do many things. One of the primary focuses I have, because this is an issue that's dear to my heart as well, having driven a taxi in New York City, is SkyTran. And I'll tell you a little bit about SkyTran. And in my other roles in life, I do continue to run and manage San Francisco Science, which is a technology group. We started out as a medical technology group, and we've expanded into industry and software, and so now we do a lot of different things. And of course, I'm an entrepreneur, and have been an entrepreneur for a long, long time, too many years, almost 30 years. And used to be a lawyer, so I feel myself qualified to speak about anything. You know the joke about the lawyer, the client comes to the lawyer and he says to the lawyer, well, how much is 2 and 2? And the lawyer says, well, what do you want it to be? So that's my training as a lawyer, and I'll tell you whatever position you want to take, I can argue with you. So SkyTran, this is the problem. In the 21st century, this is true everywhere in the world. It's not just India. You may think it's only in your neighborhood in India. Actually, this could be anywhere. It could be Manhattan. It could be Tokyo. It can be Mexico. Literally, anywhere you go on planet Earth, what you find is the urban areas are utterly congested, and people are spending 2 to 3 or 4 hours a day in their cars trying to commute. Now, the interesting thing is, if you look into these cars, even in Mumbai, you're going to see that it's about 1 person in each car. And so one has to ask, why are people spending that time in their car? Why don't they take a bus or public transportation? Well, here's a bus. It's sitting right next to the person in the car. The only difference is this person can listen to radio, talk on her cell phone, have a nice, peaceful, quiet ride, and this person is crammed, but they're both stuck in traffic. They're not going anywhere. And that's why our team invented SkyTran. It is a unique transportation modality in that it's elevated. So that immediately tells you it's not going to be stuck in traffic. All of that traffic that was on the previous slide does not apply to SkyTran. It rides above the traffic. Second, it can go up to 150 miles an hour. Why is this important? Because if you can only go 30 miles an hour, like the people mover, for example, at Heathrow Airport, then you can never bridge that distance between the city, where 30 miles an hour may be enough, to the suburbs, to the exurbs. So it doesn't become a practical mode of transportation. But with a vehicle like this, you can get on this in downtown Mumbai, and you could ride it in theory all the way to Pune. Because at 150 miles an hour, you're going to be going faster than any car on the road. So within the urban confines, where it's tight and crowded, you may be going slower. But 30 miles an hour feels very fast in the city when everything is stopped. And then as you leave and you hit the road, the highways, you can ramp up and go much, much faster. Second thing is, this is very low cost. And it's low cost because it's built in a factory and assembled on site. So just like Henry Ford in the United States was able to make the car a popular consumer device because he understood how to mass produce the cars. He had a factory, he stamped out the parts, and then he had an assembly line, and the car was put together. That dramatically lowered costs. Our transportation systems today are not really built in a factory. They're designed for each city that they go to, and that means that it's like a bespoke tailored suit. It means that someone is making the clothing for each individual place where that clothing is going to go, instead of having a factory that mass produces and ships it out. How can we do that? Because this entire system is modular. It comes together like Lego. So it's all built in a factory, and then based on the particular design of the city and elevations, we just put barcodes on it, and the people who assemble it read the barcode, and they know where it goes in the system. So I'm going to give you an idea. Light rail can cost anywhere between $100 to $150 million per kilometer. That's the standard average cost. And I tell people, even with, if you consider that 70% of that goes to pay bribes to get the contract in the first place, that's still a lot of money. SkyTran is $3 million a kilometer. So we have 150 million, 3 million. That's the difference, and that really is why SkyTran doesn't need government subsidies to operate. It can come in and be a project financed, privately financed system, which takes the burden off the government, and also, by the way, reduces a lot of the graft and corruption that goes along with these huge projects. We're silent because we are riding on a cushion of air. This is what's called passive magnetic levitation. And so we generate a magnetic wave when we move. Inside this aluminum guideway, there's a neodymium magnet. Neodymium, as some of you may know, a rare earth material. It's the most powerful magnet you can imagine. In fact, if my hand were here and had a neodymium magnet, it would crush my hand. If I held it here, it would fly towards this surface and literally crush my hand. That's how powerful it is without the use of any electromagnet. So we have a neodymium magnet in there, and when that neodymium magnet, this is a non-ferrous envelope. This aluminum doesn't have any iron in it. So there's no magnetism until this magnet starts to move. When the magnet starts to move, because the vehicle has a little electric motor there that moves it, what happens is the magnet itself creates a magnetic wave. And this magnetic wave is generated, I'm not going to get into too many details, but I know there's some engineers here. The magnet's motion creates what are called eddy currents. Anybody here know what that? Okay, so you know what eddy currents are. So this thing creates an eddy currents as it's moving, but the way we configure the aluminum and the magnet, the eddy currents cause levitation. They cause the vehicle to actually lift up. And then what happens is very similar, Commander, to what happens when you're on a little rubber boat or a speedboat. You open the throttle, and the boat starts to go, and then the nose of the boat lifts up, and it's very hard to move until suddenly, boom, that boat starts to literally almost skirt and fly over the surface of the water. That's how this works. This thing starts to move, requires some energy, then it lifts up, and that's it. It's on air. There's no friction, and it will just go as far as it can go on inertia, and it'll go very fast, but that's how we can attain the speeds. Now, the beauty of this is that in contrast to traditional magnetic levitation, for example, in China, in the Shanghai train, we do not require electricity. The Shanghai traditional maglev requires electricity to chill down the neodymium magnet to very low temperatures in order to get enough lift on the train, because the train is very big and very heavy. In contrast, because our vehicle is small, this is a 1 to 2 passenger vehicle, because it's very small and lightweight, we don't need any electricity to power it. So we use very little energy, and we don't emit any electromagnetic radiation, which is a big problem, of course, in any urban environment. So we're silent, we're secure, we're safe. Why are we safe? Because you cannot enter this vehicle unless the vehicle knows who you are. How does that work? Well, you either have an icon on your smartphone, so you've pre-registered for the system, and you touch your little icon, and now the system knows who you are, and you get a little barcode that you hold up to the door, and the door opens because it now knows that you're in the vehicle, and it knows who you are, it knows where you live, it knows what time of day it is, and it knows where you usually go. So it will send you a message to your phone saying, hello, nice to see you again, would you like to travel to someplace? It'll give you the name of the street, and you can say yes, and then it'll say, okay, it's going to cost you X rupee, do you want to take the ride? And then you can say yes again, and it will then send you a barcode. You've now bought your trip, and you have your barcode, and the door will open. Or you could say no, and then it will give you a choice of all the stations, and you just touch the station you want to go to, and again, it will tell you how much that trip will cost, and again, you can get in. We have the ability, because you all have cell phones, so you know that there are many different cell phone plans you can subscribe to. That's the way it is with SkyTran. You can have student fares, senior citizen fares, veteran fares, tourist fares. So we're able to maximize the revenue from each individual customer. And this is a very interesting business concept, and I know you guys are going into management, so it's something to think about, because I think businesses leave a lot of money on the table because they don't realize the particular consumer's lack of price sensitivity to certain services, goods, and commodities. What do I mean by that? Amazon, the famous book company, did a very interesting experiment in the United States. It started to look at the zip codes of their customers. And so if a customer from Beverly Hills ordered a book, Amazon charged it 150% the price of the book. So if the book sold for $10, Amazon would charge that person from Beverly Hills, California, a very wealthy neighborhood, would charge them $15. And if a person from Watts in California, a very poor neighborhood, ordered the same book just by the zip code, it would charge that person $7.50. And what it found is that it didn't change the number of sales. People in Beverly Hills didn't care how much the book cost. They would have paid $20. They were completely price insensitive to the book. And to the person in Watts, of course, it made a difference. They felt good. They were getting a discount off the $10 price, so they actually started to buy more books. That's what SkyTran can do. How does it work with SkyTran? Well, for example, I'm a tourist. I fly into Mumbai, and I want to go to my hotel. In my mind, I've been thinking, it's probably going to cost me $50 to get to my hotel. And so when I come to SkyTran, and SkyTran says $25 to your hotel, I'm happy. I'm thinking, wow, this is a great savings, and I'm happy. And it doesn't even occur to me that a Mumbai resident might pay $2 for the same ride. And even if that Mumbai resident did pay $2, I don't really care, because I figure, well, that person works here, they make a different salary than I do, and anyway, I'm in Mumbai once in my lifetime, I'm not going to start doing those calculations. It always struck me as absurd that in Egypt, when you go to the pyramids in Cairo, I pay the same entrance fee as an Egyptian. It seems to me absurd. It cost me thousands of dollars to get to Egypt to see the pyramids. I don't care if it's $2 or $20 or, at some point it may make a difference, but I'm willing to pay $50 to visit the pyramids, even if an Egyptian pays 50 piastres. I don't really care. I'm not in the same category as they are. And that's the way for many services as well. Hospitals in the United States, of course, are constrained by insurance, but really, what does insurance do? Insurance is coming to the hospital and saying, if you want my customers, this is what we're prepared to pay. And then the hospital has to go and try and find another insurer who may be willing to pay more because their client base is a richer client base. So there are these market opportunities out there that one can be sensitive to, especially today when really everything is computerized, so it's very easy to do this. If you had to sit someone down and say, okay, when a student comes, take the ID, then give them a discount. And when a veteran comes, see their veteran card and give them a discount. And when a tourist comes, ask for their passport. If they don't have their passport, talk to them and see if they really are tourists. I mean, you can't do that with people, but with computers, piece of cake. Low energy, we use less than 1/3 the energy of a hybrid vehicle. And we can do that because, number one, our vehicle is lightweight. Number two, we don't have any friction. So a car uses a lot of energy just on the wheels overcoming friction. Since we don't have friction, we don't waste any of that energy. And we put energy back into the grid, and we do it directly into the grid. We don't have to put it through a battery that then goes into the grid. It goes from the grid back into the grid, and so we don't lose any energy in the transmission. And of course, we have very low emissions because this is electric powered. There's no diesel fumes, and we can use gas, natural gas, to generate the electricity. So it's very green. We can also put solar panels on the guideway and generate a lot of power through the solar panels, which again go directly into the grid, so it's a very efficient use. And this is key. The vehicle doesn't stop anywhere except for your station. So when you get on the vehicle and you want to go all the way to Z, and there's someone in front of you who wants to get off at X, you don't stop when that person stops at X. Rather, what happens is that person who wants to stop at X goes off the guideway on an off-ramp, just like on a highway. They go off, they stop at their station, and you pass them right by. And that allows you to go from where you get on the system to exactly where you want to get off, not where someone else stops and slows you down. So it becomes an extraordinary modality of transportation. Do you guys want to ask questions about SkyTran? And you can interrupt me anytime, so I don't answer that. Any questions on SkyTran?
What's the number for which is made?
The number of passengers, you mean?
Yeah.
Each vehicle is designed for 2 persons, maximum. But if you look at cars on the road, and our customer base, we believe, are the people in the car, not the people in the bus. So if you look at people in the car, most vehicles all over the world are usually one passenger, one driver, maybe another passenger. Commuting time. And by keeping the vehicle small, we are able to realize all of these economies of scale. Low cost of construction, low cost of operation, low cost of maintenance. However, the system as a system can carry 20,000 people an hour on a bi-directional guideway. And that's more than light rail. That's equivalent to 6 lanes of a highway. So the system as a system is capable of carrying a lot of people. How can we do that? We can do that because the software allows us to have vehicles travel every half second. So if you stand on the guideway and you count the number of vehicles going by in an hour, you'll get to 10,000 vehicles. Actually, a little bit more. Any other questions?
Excuse me. If, for say, any hindrance happens in the flow of traffic, will it affect the whole system, or you have some sort of an islanding facility where you can separate that particular system from the whole grid and operate the other part of the grid normally?
Yeah, okay, good question. So, how does the system fail? Basically, that's the question. And we've designed the system to fail safe, and we have to design it to fail safe, otherwise we won't get certification from the different bodies. The way the system fails is that all the vehicles are getting their power from the same source. That's the guideway. The power is coming to the vehicle from the guideway. And so if the power fails, it fails to all the vehicles at the same time. So you're not going to have a situation where one vehicle is stationary and another vehicle rams into it at 100 miles an hour. Because if this vehicle stops, this vehicle stops. Now we have a whole host of ways to stop. There are normal brakes, regular brakes, but ultimately we can stop the vehicle like that by just dropping a piece of aluminum into the magnetic field, which disrupts it because of the eddy current effect. So that will stop it on the spot, and the passenger will suffer 3G, maybe 4G even, but that passenger won't die. It will have an unpleasant, strap mark. In addition to that, in the event of a catastrophic earthquake, or where you have to stop the system. Well, we designed this in California, where of course it's an earthquake-prone region. And so part of the system is a little laser that runs through the system periodically. It can go every hour, it can go every 5 hours, because we have earthquakes in California all the time. Literally every day there's an earthquake. They're small earthquakes, so they're not noticed, but if you read the paper has just like, you have a little weather blurb, we also have a little earthquake blurb, and it tells us, we had a 3.0, a 2.5, and so the Earth is moving all the time. So we have a little laser vehicle that runs inside the guideway and measures the true of the guideway. And if the guideway is out of true, then the system stops, realign it, and then you continue. And this happens in San Francisco frequently, and in fact, San Francisco has a public transportation system called BART. It's like a subway, underground, and it goes under San Francisco Bay. And when there's an earthquake, that train stops, and it stops under San Francisco Bay. Now just imagine yourself sitting under San Francisco Bay in an earthquake, and you're trapped. You can't get out of that train. SkyTran, worst case scenario, you're going to be trapped just like you would on a ski lift, so you'll have to sit there for an hour until a cherry lift comes and takes you out. And we've considered whether allowing the passenger to push a button and inflate a slide and do all those things. We thought, no, not worth it. And we can also tow the vehicle, so we have a lot of ways to get the passengers out of the vehicle. The other important thing is that each vehicle has an electric motor inside it that's constantly charging while the vehicle is in motion. So when the vehicle stops getting power, that little motor knows to turn on and take the vehicle to the next station. So those are some of the ways that the vehicle is fail-safe. Yeah?
What's the feasibility of SkyTran in the developing countries?
Would you mind, and all of you please, stand up, tell me your name, tell me where you're from, and tell me in a sentence what your background is. Okay, so you're going to start.
Yeah, my name is Chandrika. I'm from Mumbai. I just want to know what is the feasibility of SkyTran in the developing countries, because population in developing countries are below poverty line, most of the people. Don't even have the $2 to spend. Plus, you cannot change consumer behavior so easily. So can you tell me the feasibility in developing countries?
Right, so that's a great question, and we've thought long and hard about where would be the right place to start. We believe that ultimately Asia is our market, much more so than the West, because Asia simply doesn't have the infrastructure in many places that the West has. And the West, and I know it's hard for you to believe, living in India, where each one of you thinks you live in the most bureaucratic society in the world, but the United States today has become more difficult for innovators than anywhere else on earth. And it's true, you see all of these cool iPhone apps and software coming out of Silicon Valley, but that's all you're seeing. When was the last time you saw a new infrastructure project in the United States? Never. And that's because we have become very bureaucratic, very legalistic. As soon as you try and build or do something, you get hit with 1 million lawsuits, and it makes action very difficult. So we ruled out the United States from the beginning. We knew we wouldn't be able to deal with it there. And we chose Israel as our test site. And the reason we chose Israel is because it's a small country. but very sophisticated population that loves technology. Israelis walk around with 3 or 4 cell phones, and each one of them has the most new cell phone, and they have all the new technology, and they're concentrated in a very narrow corridor in the center of the country, and traffic here has become unbearable. And we gambled that the Israeli government would be open to this and would help us, and that gamble turned out to be true. And the benefit of being there is now we have the government cutting all the red tape for us and moving this fast track along. And the overall benefit is that the Israeli standards and rules and regulations are considered to be strict enough that the West will accept them as valid and will provide us with an ISO book that we can then take to all of the Asian countries and deliver it as a package. And we can do that quickly. So our first systems are going into Tel Aviv, which is the center of the country, Netanya, which is another coastal city, and that's a great opportunity for us. Just to give you some sense, we wanted to build this in Mountain View, California, which is where NASA is based, and it's our hometown. And we just looked at 20 different government agencies. We'd have to get permission just to build a system that was like a roller coaster that wouldn't even carry passengers. So we have some challenges in the US. So the first system's going in there. But since we believe that India is probably going to be our best market, and I'll explain why, we started to do work here. And over a year ago, we went to Gujarat, and we met with Modi, and we went to Kerala, and we started to advance the process, and in Gujarat immediately, the government allowed us to build a 5-kilometer system in Ahmedabad. We chose not to do that because 5 kilometers really doesn't allow us to express the potential of the system, and we thought it would be a mistake, and they wanted us to use it as a feeder system for some buses, and it just really didn't work for us. So we focused on Kerala, where there's a very big 70-kilometer system up for grabs, in Kottayam, and I'll be going there this coming week. I'll be there on Tuesday. And that's moving forward. And I think we're going to now finally get the government approvals, and we'll start building. So that looks very positive. Now, why India? Because Indians, obviously a certain section of the population, are very much like the Israelis. Smart, intelligent, educated, love technology. So yes, there will be a certain segment of the population that will use it, but frankly, that's our segment, that's our market, because this is another layer of transportation. We don't pretend that we're going to come in and replace cars and buses and trains. All we're saying is this is another valve. It's another safety valve to release the built-up pressure. And once people see it and start to use it and realize that it's not that scary and it's quiet and it's comfortable and it doesn't cost that much, then we'll be able to expand the system more and more, and hopefully we'll get down that pyramid of users. Okay, anything else on SkyTran? Okay, I'm going to move on to what I consider probably the greatest skill that every entrepreneur has to either have or learn how to develop, because without this skill of knowing people, and that's the joke that, you don't need contacts if you know a lot of people. Well, you have to build up your Rolodex or your iPhone contacts list or whatever you're using. You have to be able to access people, and the more people you know, the greater your chances of success. Going back to your question, another reason we thought Israel would be an easy country to work in, because it's what some people refer to as a 2-telephone call country. You can get to anybody in 2 telephone calls, because someone always knows the Prime Minister, or someone always is married to the brother of the Minister of Transportation. So, I was lucky. I was on a plane flying to Goa from Mumbai, and I sat next to a very nice lady, and she was chattering away the whole time, and we had a very nice talk, and I was telling her about SkyTran, and I'm on my way to Kerala, and she says, "Oh, Kerala, my brother-in-law is the Minister of Finance." Bingo. And then, previously in my career, when I was still a lawyer, I was hired by a big agricultural company Dutch company to go to Mozambique, which was still then under early Marxist rule. It was still early after the revolution, and to go to Mozambique to try and persuade the Mozambicans to return the cashew plantations that had been nationalized and taken away from this Dutch agricultural company. So I'm thinking, okay, I'm going to go to Mozambique, but I'm not going to be able to do anything, because if anyone, if you read any history or political science or current affairs, you knew that this government was not about to privatize what it had just nationalized. But they bought me a first class ticket. I figured, fine, I've always wanted to go, so this will be fun. So I get on the plane, and I'm sitting next to this robust gentleman, and we're drinking, and we're talking, and having a good time. And then at some point during the conversation, he asked me, so why are you going to Mozambique? And I said, well, I'm representing this Dutch company, and we want to find a way to privatize this plantation that had been nationalized. And he said, oh, then we'll need to talk. And I said, yeah, sure, why? He said, because I'm the Minister of Agriculture. So again, if you have contact, I could have gotten off the plane there. I could have gone home. I didn't need anything more. I had the Minister of Agriculture. I had his phone number. We were drinking buddies. That's all I needed. So this is really, really important. And how do you do this? You have to network. And it's an overused phrase, and people usually tell you have to network and you have to build your network, but no one really tells you how to do it, so I'm going to tell you how to do it. Read as many newspapers and magazines as you can. Why? Because when you read the newspaper, you're going to see names and what they do. You're going to suddenly be able to say, oh, so-and-so is in business and he's working with this other person, and you're going to be able to circle the names and write them down. And even though you don't know those people yet, you have a target. Now you know who you want to know. And that's very important, to have a target, because if you sit around and think, oh, who's going to help me? I want to start this company, or who's going to help me out of this problem? How am I going to solve it? And you don't even know where to start. But once you have names and once you figure out who the network is, then you have a target and you can start attacking that target. Mark the names, I said that. And then make plans. So what does that mean? That means, okay, you've read the papers, you've circled 10 names, and now you have to make plans on how you are going to meet that person. Now, it sounds trivial, but you also have to decide what you're going to say when you meet that person. Because lots of times I have people say to me, oh, I was dreaming of meeting Bill Gates, and I was in New York, and he just happened to be in the elevator with me. And I said, great, so what did you do? He said, no, I couldn't remember. I didn't know what to say. Okay, so just imagine that you have a speech ready for when you meet Bill Gates. But since you've marked the names, your job is easier, because now you have a list of 10 people and you have to practice, okay, if I met so-and-so, what would I say to that person? What is it that you want from that person? What can you offer that person to make yourself more interested? I'm at this Think conference here in Goa, and there are illustrious people at the conference, and I knew Tina Brown was going to be there, and I really wanted to connect with Tina Brown. Not because she's a brilliant editor, but because she knows everyone in the world. And if I can get her interested in what I'm doing, she'll be able to connect me to everybody in the world. So I, waited for her to see where she was going to sit. I, of course, sat down next to her. I opened my laptop. All I did was show her the picture of the vehicle that I showed you earlier, a nice black background, silver vehicle. It's very cool. And she said, oh, yeah, I love that. That's so cool. And I said, we're putting together a group of illustrious people to serve as an advisory board. I'd love to talk to you about that. Now, okay, pay attention. I didn't say I'm going to appoint her to any kind of board. I said I'm putting together a board. I didn't say I'm putting her on the board. I said I want to talk to her about that. And then I asked her for her card or contact information. Of course, she gave me the contact information. Why did she do it? Because she's thinking, hey, this is cool. I could be on a board. And so, there's something for her, there's something for me. Now I have her card. Now I'll follow up and I'll talk to her and I'll get to the people I really want on the board. But that's really important. Make plans. And then execute. So I just told you how I executed with Tina Brown. Answer phone calls and emails. So I get probably 100 emails an hour. I'm not kidding. I answer each and every one of them, even those that want me to save the Nigerian lady who just absconded with $100 million because her husband died. I answer every email I get, even if it's just to say, I'm busy right now, I'll get back to you. And then I leave it open so that I know I've got to get back to that person. But I think in today's rapid communication age, you can't afford to not respond to an email. It really is rude. It upsets the person who sent you the email no end. You never know when you're going to need or want or have some reason to be in touch with that person. And how hard is it to hit reply, really? I mean, it takes all of 2 seconds, but you would be amazed at how many people don't answer phone calls and don't respond to emails. So phone calls, I grant you, are time-consuming. But again, they're text messaging, so you have the phone number, you just reply, got your call, and today there are even automatic responses that you can send. So there's no excuse, you have to do that. Go out. This is not easy. People, think, oh yeah, going out, that's a piece of cake. It's a job, and many people don't like to go out. I really don't like to go out. I may look like a bubbly, enthusiastic person. Actually, this is all a facade. I really like to stay home with my dogs and watch TV. That's what I like to do. But I don't, because this is, I'm an entrepreneur, and this is what I have to do. So. I'm an easy date. I respond to any invitation. I go out and meet people because this is part of my job. It's probably the most important part of my job is to get out, get people to know me, and get to know people. And every person has a story. I find every person interesting. There's always something you can learn from people. But you're not going to do that if you're sitting home playing with your dogs. You've got to go out. You've got to go. And if that means go out to the party, the cocktail party, or the dinner, or to a bar, or with friends, this is key. And it's very easy after a hard day at work to say, I'm just going to stay home. You can't do that. You have to make that as part of your job. Talk to people. I'll interview a fly. I'll tell you, if I get on a plane and there's a seat empty next to me, most people are the happiest person in the world. I'm depressed because I've missed an opportunity to talk to someone. And as I said, I think everyone has something of interest and something interesting to say. I mentioned the importance of the Rolodex, but that also means that you have to maintain your Rolodex. And that means if you met someone a year ago, and now you've met someone, and you realize there could be a connection between the two people, you've got to go back and do your own little LinkedIn thing, where you're saying this person knows that person. And that's your own little system, and it's extremely important because that personalizes you to both other players. Or you may find that you've met someone, and again, memory, if you don't have a good memory, you have to write notes to yourself. But sometimes you'll meet someone and you'll think, oh wow, this person I met a month ago was looking for someone just like this person, and I should really put them in touch. And so now you can make those connections. I was seated next to a fascinating doctor. I'll tell you his name because he gave me his book. So, I don't know if any of you have heard of Sharad Paul. He wrote this book on skin. So Sharad Paul's sitting next to me, and we're talking because I'm fascinated by what he had to say. And I said to him, do you know Tina Brown? And he said, no, I never met her. And I said, well, come on, I'll introduce you. I don't know Tina Brown. But I met Tina Brown like 2 minutes ago, right? I just told you I met Tina Brown. So now I feel empowered. So I take Sharad over, and I said, Tina, this is Sharad. So now I'm on a first-name basis with Tina Brown, right? And I'm introducing her to people, and so Sharad's for sure thinking, Tina and I slept together, and Tina thinks, oh, this guy's connected, he's introducing famous skin doctor. So you got to play that role. Follow up. So as I said, I met Tina Brown. Now I'm going to follow up, and follow up means not just send an email because it probably goes straight into her trash, but I'm going to have to call and get through to her secretary and say, I'm so-and-so, and I met her at Think, and she wanted me to call her, so, I get some traction. But you have to follow up, not just take the business card, but then follow up. And then matchmaking, I just gave you an example of that with Sharad. Why? Because Sharad now, I'm his favorite person in the world. I introduced him to Tina Brown, and he's going to remember that. And Tina Brown will probably forget the whole thing in 3 minutes, but for Sharad now, that's a great opportunity, and now I can call on Sharad and do all sorts of cool things with him. Trade shows. I cannot tell you how important trade shows are, and I know you have them all over India, up and down, but to me, this was the greatest eye-opener ever. When I started out in medical devices, I had no clue that there were these things called trade shows that covered every single facet of industry. I mean, there's a trade show devoted to the people who make the little screw in your glasses. And it's a whole conference center full of people who make that little screw. And you can spend literally 2 years going from one trade show to the other trade show, but those will be very valuable years. Why? Number one, best opportunity to jump in and within a day or 2 days know the industry. I'll tell you briefly about another company I'm involved with, but it's an industrial company. I knew nothing about machining and spindles and any of that. It was all Chinese to me. I went to a trade show in Hanover. In 2 days, I can be a world expert on this. I can talk to you about sizes and speeds and machining and anything you want to talk about relating to that industry. And it's all from going to that trade show. So number two, it opens your eyes. When you go to trade shows that you really don't know anything about, and suddenly you realize there's a whole world out there that you never even knew. It's like the universe. We look at our little city, and then our country, and then the planet, and then the solar system, and then the galaxy, and then you realize there are a gajillion other galaxies out there. And that's what these trade shows are like. And it will show you the opportunity, because each one of these trade shows is a huge market business opportunity. It shows you that there are lots of different kinds of jobs out there that you never even knew existed. I grew up in a traditional Jewish household. There were 2 jobs. You could be either a lawyer or a doctor. That was it. There was nothing else available. That's what Jewish families in the United States raised their children to be. And so suddenly when you got into the world and you realize, wait a second, I could have done all these other things, it's too late, because now you're already a lawyer or a doctor and you're brainwashed. So don't make the mistake of falling into a trap of living the life your parents planned for you, because there are lots of cool jobs out there and there are lots of different things you can do. In addition to that, it will very quickly build your Rolodex, because the people at the trade shows, by and large, are salespeople. That's why they're there, to sell the company's product. And so they will gladly talk to you. They will gladly give you their business card because you're a potential customer. At least that's what they think. So you'll be able to learn a lot and make a huge number of contacts in the industry very quickly. So I can't tell you how cool I think these trade shows are. Any questions on networking? Come on, guys. I'm sure there's something. Do you folks network? Did you network? What's your name? Okay, what's your name?
Abhigya.
And what are you? An engineer? Or
Yeah, I'm an engineer.
Engineer? What's your engineering degree?
Computer science.
Computer science. Okay, so you're the classic geek, right? So computer science, and why are you here? What are you hoping to do?
Because earlier I was working on a project which was in medical industry. It was designing a software for the hospitals.
That would do what? What would software do?
Like hospital information system, like it's for managing all the data in the hospital.
Right.
Means we can centralize the data so that doctors sitting at their cabin, they can see what's the patient's record, what is the occupancy of the beds.
And so you're going to get a degree here, and what is it that you hope to do with that degree? What's your job? What's your dream job?
So basically, this IT industry only means management post in this.
So you want to go into the IT industry in healthcare management? Okay, and who do you think you need to know in order to be in that industry? Who would you want to know? If I could say to you, look, give me 5 names, or 3 names, or job titles of people you want to know, who would that be?
I didn't get the question.
If I could say to you, if I could promise you, in fact I will promise you, you tell me 3 people you want to meet, and I'll arrange for you to meet them.
CEOs of IT companies.
Infosys?
Infosys, TCS, Wipro.
That's what you want to meet. Infosys, Wipro, and TCS.
Siemens, means all these healthcare devices industries also.
And you want to meet them why? Because to get a job or to sell them a product? Or why do you want to meet them?
First, I'll go for a job. Then after getting the experience, I'll go for business.
Okay. Who's the CEO of Wipro?
Ajim.
Okay. And let's say I'm he, and now we're in the elevator. Well, what do you say to me?
So first, I'll tell you about my background.
Well, tell me. We're in the elevator. We're going to get to the 20th floor very soon. So start talking.
So, hi sir, good afternoon. I'm Avaya, and I'm a computer engineer. And I'm very much interested in your HIS software, which is working in most of the hospitals. I really want to know how it work. I want to manage that. And I have a good technical knowledge also, so I think I can do that.
I got off the elevator a long time ago. I got off before my floor because I just wanted to get away from you. You were boring me. Okay? You have to think, what can I say to this person that will make him want to stay with me, not get away from me? You have to imagine in your head, I'm this person. What could someone say to me that would make me want to talk to them? For example, I had a cousin, this is a true story, who worked for Bernie Madoff. Do you guys know who Bernie Madoff is? Bernie Madoff is the famous New York crook who had this kiting scheme where it's a pyramid scheme. He would promise investors 12% on their money, and he basically took everybody's money, but he was very clever in that he would not accept all investors. So you had to be referred by someone, and even then he was very careful to turn away enough people so that people wanted to get in even more. And he had huge institutions, and he absconded with something like $6 billion when this thing finally collapsed. Okay? So my cousin, this is before the scam came out. Bernie Madoff was legendary in Wall Street and New York circles, and I had a cousin who went to NYU Finance, and he wanted to work for Bernie Madoff because he was considered a genius. So he's riding, he gets into the elevator, he's on his way to a job interview with Madoff's firm. He didn't expect to meet Bernie Madoff. He gets into the elevator with Bernie Madoff, and Madoff, sure enough, walks into the elevator and turns to Madoff and he says, I can make your investors 14% a year. But Madoff looks at him and says, who are you? And he starts talking, and they get off the elevator together, and he got the job, and fortunately was arrested with everybody else. But the point of the story is, think, what would you say to the person of Wipro, the chairman of Wipro, if you had the chance? Just telling them who you are and your engineer, so what? So there are another 100 million like you out there. You gotta book it. You gotta think something specific. Thanks a lot. I appreciate it. So start thinking about that. And then think about how it is that you can actually get to them. You surely know someone who, you know, and you work your way through the system. Okay? The gentleman over there with the blue shirt, blue tie. Yeah. Get up, please. What's your name?
So, Amit Khanna.
And Amit, what's your...
So, I'm IT engineer.
IT engineer?
Yeah.
Okay, and do you also want to work with this fellow? What program?
No, sir.
What do you want to do when you...
So, I wanted to be an entrepreneur, but I want to go into a different sector. The healthcare management is, I chose healthcare management because I had consulted with my dad, who's a doctor, and I had consulted with a lot of industry members. I met the CEO of Apollo and everybody. So I went into this. But this is particularly what I want to do as a job. Maybe 5 years or 7 years down the lane, I would move into a different sector which inspires me. Like entertainment, I want to go into entertainment.
If you want to go into entertainment, if ultimately that's your goal, you should don't entertain from day one. It's people deceive themselves into thinking, oh, I'm going to work for a big corporation for a few years and pay back my student loans maybe and get some experience, and then I'm going to go do what I really want to do. Life hits you in angles and at times that you cannot anticipate or expect. And you may find yourself for all sorts of reasons now stuck in the job that you took, which you really didn't want and wanted to go somewhere else. My suggestion is if entertainment is where you want to be, you should find yourself a job, even if it's entry-level position, even if it's lesser than what you think you could get with some other organization, and try and be in that industry. Now, it's a huge industry, so I would think that wherever you go, there are going to be great jobs in that industry. The problem you have is, how are you going to find those jobs? That's where the networking comes in. You need to start networking with anybody in the industry, whether it's Bollywood or TV or radio or anything. You need to start making those connections, because that's how you're going to get the job. And we all think that our societies are egalitarian, but the truth of the matter is that ultimately the people who get most of the jobs are people whose parents know somebody else, and it's just the way the world works. And we keep society quiet by pretending that it's an egalitarian system. And some people slip through, so we kind of have these examples that it is egalitarian. But most people, and Wall Street is notorious. You look at the people at Wall Street, they're all sons and daughters of someone who used to work there, or knows someone, or connected, or from the same school. Networking connections, you got to work that angle. That's the biggest challenge for an entrepreneur. Thank you. I have another short little PowerPoint that I was going to take you to, because it speaks specifically to the medical industry, the medical device industry, which is, as I said, it's where I started. Let's see. So our tagline is where science means business, and it's more than just a vapid line, because I'm a businessman. I really don't care about the science. Okay, I'm exaggerating a little bit, but to put it in the crass, most blunt fashion, I care about the dollars and cents. I want to make money. So when a scientist comes to me and she thinks she's got the greatest idea in the world, first thing I ask her is, how big is the market? Okay, I don't care if it, cures the most obscure disease in 3 children in the most needy country on planet Earth. Let the UN deal with it. I'm in it to make money. And by taking that approach, I'm helping that person, because if that person's coming to me, then that person wants to make money too. If that person didn't want to make money, they go to the World Health Organization, right? They go to some charitable group and deliver their technology or know-how or intellectual property to that group. If they're coming to me, it's because they want to find a way to commercialize their system. So we talk about changing environment, and it is a changing environment. The world's always changing. The environment for medical devices, and I'm speaking now uniquely to medical devices, is changing because the biggest market is still the United States. That market is controlled by the Food and Drug Administration. The Food and Drug Administration has become much, much more strict in what it is allowing to market. So it used to be, and I don't know how much time I have, and if I'm boring you guys, you can stop me. I won't be offended. If you need to go, you can go. But I'm going to keep talking until you throw me out of here. The Food and Drug Administration, Congress passed a law in 1986 that said everything that was invented before 1986 is grandfathered in, means it's automatically approved. Anything that's invented after 1986 requires pre-market approval. Pre-market approval means heavy clinical trials, 3-phase clinical trials, first showing no harm, then a larger group, then a larger group, double-blind studies. It's a process that takes 2 to 3 years, can cost hundreds of millions of dollars. So, of course, when that law was passed, the medical device industry was up in arms, and they all went to their Congress people and said, "You friggin' crazy, there's no way we can stay in this regime." And anyway, we have a lot of devices that are basically just like the devices that existed in 1986. Why should we now have to take those devices through the whole preclinical? So Congress put pressure on the FDA, and the FDA came up with a regulation called 510K. And 510K is the Bible of every medical device entrepreneur, because 510K says if your device is substantially equivalent to a device that existed in 1986 or before, it is grandfathered in also. So instead of a 3-year, $100 million process, it's a 90-day process. The FDA has to respond in 90 days. Well, guess what? There has been no new invention since 1986 because every medical device is substantially equivalent to something that existed beforehand. So when we get an invention, the first thing we do is we go to our regulatory people and say, start writing the 510K application. It's an application you present to the FDA and you say, look, you see this new thing that's got all these electronic chips and, you know, bells and whistles and social network and everything? Yeah, well, it's basically exactly the same as a Rolodex. And that existed in 1986, so we should be grandfathered in. And it used to be until very recently that the FDA would say, fine, fine, fine. And now the FDA is starting to crack down a little bit. The FDA is a very different organization than the European notified body. So in Europe, as you may know, each country has its own what they call notified body. And to get EU approval on a device, what we call a CE mark, in order to be able to sell it commercially in that country, you can choose any one of the different notified bodies, and you go to that notified body and you present your device. And then the notified body of that country's philosophy is, we're going to try and approve your device, and we're going to take you by the hand, and we're going to show you exactly what you need to do in order to get approval. That's the European approach. The American approach is the FDA stands there and says, I'm the goaltender, and over my dead body am I going to let you score. So you can come in with everything you think is right, and I'm still going to tell you you're wrong. And that's the way the two different systems work. Now, so it's much easier to get, obviously, to get a CE mark, and that's why lots of companies go to Europe first and get a CE mark, and that allows them to sell while they're fighting the FDA. So that's the changing environment I spoke of. Innovation, it's like a bonfire. You start something, you never know where you're going to go, but regulated innovation is like a match. Why? Because it's regulated. Groucho Marx, the American comedian, has a great line. I'm probably going to mess it up, but the line is that government looks all over, finds things that aren't problems, comes up with the wrong solutions, and then forces them on everybody. And that's kind of like government direction. Because, you know, God bless the government, it's made up of people just like us, but somehow that transition, they think they know better than everyone else, and you know, I'm reminded now of this nightmare. We had a doctor from Argentina, his name's Juan Perotti. Any medical doctors here? Juan Perotti is the inventor of what's called the skin graft. So, pardon me, not the skin graft, the arterial graft. So if you had, you know, arteries are like these pipes, and they're under a lot of pressure, and pipes, just like any pneumatic tube, can get a little weak spot, and if that weak spot starts to bulge, then you're going to get an aneurysm. It's going to explode. If it's in the brain, you get a stroke. If it's in the heart, you get a heart attack. If it's in your aortal abdominal artery, you're going to die. And you're going to die very quickly. And the problem is no one knows how to diagnose this. And even if they did know how to diagnose it, they didn't know how to treat it. Well, Juan created this little sleeve that basically you could put on the artery and it kept the aneurysm in place and fixed it. And he's legendary among vascular surgeons. So Juan came up with this idea that he could put a little catheter up this artery, the carotid artery, go up the carotid artery into the brain, basically, and pull out a blood clot, which causes stroke. And most of the strokes are caused by these blood clots. Now, if you put in a blood thinner, you're just going to make it worse, because then the blood's going to go all over and clot inside the brain. So his idea was I can just pull it out. How can I pull it out? Well, I connect this artery to a vein, high pressure, low pressure, it'll go back, the blood will flow backward. And he knew he could do this without starving the brain from oxygen, because there's a little circle up here called the circle of Willis, where the artery, the carotid artery from this side goes up and connects to the carotid artery from this side. And so he knew that what would happen is instead of having blood go up both sides, the blood from here would simply traverse over the brain. Very clever innovation, very simple. He had a hospital, he worked at a hospital in Buenos Aires where they saw a lot of stroke patients who got to the hospital right after their stroke. This was a densely populated area, and Argentina had launched this stroke awareness program, much like a heart attack awareness program, where people today mostly know, largely through television, that if you feel numb in your right arm and you have pressing on your chest, you're having a heart attack, get to the hospital. And so they had this similar program in Argentina where they alerted people to signs of stroke, disorientation, blindness, and so get to the hospital quickly. So we would get stroke patients within 3 to 4 hours of stroke. He would rush them into the OR, and he would stick up this little device that we made, and he would pull out the clot, and those people came back to virtually 100% normal. So armed with about 20 cases where we show the patient come in, complete stroke, can't move, half side paralyzed. We go in, we do the procedures, that person's back to normal. We go into the FDA panel, and we're sitting around a chair, and we're showing them these cases, just like I'm showing you on the screen. We're showing them the live cases from Argentina, and the doctors on the panel, these are government doctors that work for the FDA, are looking at us and they're saying, sorry, that's not possible. And we're saying, what's not possible? We're saying, what you're doing is not possible, because if you suck the blood out from this side of the carotid artery, then the brain's going to be starved and it won't get oxygen, and there's no way that. And we're just saying, well, look, here we're doing it. And they're saying, well, sorry, but it can't be. It's just not possible. I'm saying, well, look, just look. Believe me. Don't confuse me with the facts. We know it's not possible. We're not interested in what you're showing us. And then 11 o'clock a.m. came around, and they got up and walked out of the room, and that was it. We were left to kind of like scratch our heads. What do we do now? It took another 1.5 years until we were able to get the FDA to even pay attention to what we're saying. In the meantime, we already had FDA approval. We had CE mark approval in Europe, and we were selling the device, and we were the #1 device in Europe. But those are the kinds of things. So government regulation can really stifle innovation. The reason the internet has grown like wildfire, the iPhone, the apps, because the government hasn't figured out how to regulate it. But if they do, they're always threatening to do something to make the world a better place, then you'll see that innovation will probably dramatically slow. And regulated medical innovation, as I said, can put the flame out entirely, because without FDA approval, you simply can't sell your product. So you can have the best product in the world. If for some reason you pissed off an examiner, or you can't get them to focus on what you're talking about, you might as well cash it in. So the innovation pathway, how does this work? You have to have an idea, right? Then you have to get over the technology hurdle, meaning, okay, you have an idea, now how do we actually build a product? I can share with you, we had these engineers come to us, biomedical engineers, they said, we came up with a great idea, there are all these stents now in the artery, stents are these little scaffolding that holds open the artery, especially in the heart. So we have these stents, but these stents are getting filled up with gunk, with fat and calcium. So we have this little scraper that can go in. It's a very low-speed, high-torque scraper. And it'll scrape out the inside of the stent, so you don't have to do another stent implant. And it was based on hydraulics, and in theory, it was this great theory and everything. Well, when we finally built it and pushed the button to turn it on, boom, the whole thing exploded with water flying everywhere. So sometimes, in theory, it just doesn't work in practice. And then, of course, you're competing for investment dollars with the internet and the iPhones. And I can tell you, this is, for people who are not in this industry, this is a nightmare, because everyone looks at these internet startups who are, 3 engineers and an iPhone, and they sell their company to Facebook for $1 billion. And, here you're telling them, well, it's going to be 4 to 5 years, and then we have to get FDA approval, and they may not give us approval, and so they're thinking, why would I give you money? I can just give it to two 17-year-olds with acne and an iPhone. The economy, we're very susceptible to the vicissitudes of the economy, and so when the economy's good, people feel flush and they'll write checks. They don't really think about it. When the economy's bad, nobody likes to take risks. And then, eventually you get to the money tree, right? That's your traditional innovation pathway. Medical innovation, you have the idea, you've got to get over the technology hurdle, you've got to try and raise money, dependent on the economy, but that's not the end of your path. Now you've got to deal with the FDA. And I can't tell you how humbled you feel after you do it. And I'm sure they're not bad people, they're doing their job, but what happens, it's like when you grow older and you have children, you'll appreciate it, but the eldest slaps the second around, and then the second takes out all her aggression on the little kid, and so that's like it comes down the chain. Well, that's what happens, some place somewhere, somebody dies from a drug or a medical device, right? It may be 0.001 of the population, but it gets a headline. Now, the president wants to know, why did this person die? And so he calls in the leader of his party or her party, and I want an answer to this. Okay, that congressperson summons a panel, and they call these, the FDA people in front of them, and they say, how could you ever give this stupid drug approval? Well, how could you ever have done this? This is the worst drug on earth. And it doesn't matter if the FDA people say, well, we did clinical evaluations, actually saved more lives than it hurt. It's, blah, blah. Doesn't matter. The Congress people need to get their moment on television, beating up on the bureaucrats. And now what does the FDA do? The FDA, the poor person leaves chastened from the hearing room and is muttering to herself, I'm never going to allow another drug. I'm never going to allow another drug. And that's, if that's your luck of the draw and that's who you face, you're not going to get your drug allowed. Here's another big one, government reimbursement. You can have the best device in the world, and you can even have FDA approval. But if you don't fall within the government reimbursement schemes, meaning that they recognize this as a therapeutic treatment, and they are going to reimburse the hospital or the doctor for prescribing it, you'll never be able to sell it because nobody's going to pay out of pocket for anything. That's just the mentality of the medical world. People will go out and spend $1,000 on an iPhone, but they won't spend $100 on a special kind of adhesive that they need to control their blood pressure. I mean, just that's the psychology of the market. So if you don't have government reimbursement, you're not going to be able to sell your device. How do you get government reimbursement? Okay, you take your FDA approval. So now it's been 2 years if you're lucky, and now you have your FDA approval, maybe 3. Now you submit this to the government, asking to recognize it and prescribe a reimbursement code. Well, the government bureaucrats whom I pity on this panel, they have a budget, right? This is their basket. They have a certain amount of dollars in this basket, and they have to decide what of this basket they're going to give to which products. And this is a finite amount. It doesn't, just because a new drug comes on the market or a new technology or a new device, doesn't mean suddenly this basket gets larger. No, it just means that they have to slice the slices thinner. And so what is their natural inclination? It's to say no, because they don't want to have to slice this thinner. They're getting beat up as it is by all the insurance companies who want to get more approvals. And you always hear some sob story that there's a new experimental drug and the hospital won't pay for it. And nobody can pay for it. Well, yeah, nobody can pay for it because people aren't willing to allocate the money to the healthcare system in order to increase this basket. I don't know how it works in India. I'm sure it's similar, that you have to have approved drugs. No, it doesn't work that way.
We have approved drug, but most of our medical expenses is out of pocket.
Out of pocket. What about insurance?
Insurance is there, but again,
but they have to recognize it.
Yeah.
If your insurance company doesn't recognize
Yeah,
it.
as
as far as insurance is concerned, there are various clauses out there. Clauses like the co-payment and deductibles, where most of the part is not covered or maybe completely out of the pocket.
Right. So our best bet to get reimbursement is to be able to show the government panel that we can get people out of the hospital faster, right? Because a day in the hospital in the United States costs thousands of dollars. If I can show them reliably that if they use my device, I can get you out of the hospital faster, they'll approve it. And that's why there was such a growth in laparoscopic surgery, where instead of like full open body surgery, they just go into a port, because people would come in and go out of the hospital on the same day, so the government loved it. It was saving a lot of money. But if it's not that kind of treatment, you can have a big problem. Interestingly, and this is something you learn as you grow older, we're all human beings, we're all motivated by the same kinds of things. So in the United States, doctors make a lot of money by doing procedures, right? So if you go to a surgeon and you say, my heart hurts, I feel pressure, he's going to schedule you for heart surgery, like immediately. And if you go to a cardiologist, the cardiologist is going to say, oh, you need a stent. Don't go to heart surgery, I'll do a stent. I mean, why is that? Because, well, number one, of course, they have an economic incentive, and so you can't ignore that. But also, that's what they're trained. If you're trained as a cardiologist to put in stents, that's what you do in life. And so everything to you, like, what's the saying? That if you're a hammer, everything looks like a nail? That's the way it is, right? So if you're an invasive cardiologist, everything looks like a stent. I had a friend who called me and he said, hey, you're in the medical device industry. I've got this, heart kind of thing, and angina, and I'm going to see my cardiologist tomorrow. What do you think he's going to do? And I said, well, how many kids does your cardiologist have? He said, what? He said, how many children in college does your cardiologist have? He said, why are you asking me that? I said, just tell me. He says, well, he's got 2 kids in college, and there's a third who's going to be going to college next year. I said, okay, he's probably going to give you 2 stents. He's going to testify. I said, no way. I said, John, it's a done deal. I guarantee it. Sure enough, he went, and he got 2 stents. So people tend to do what they know how to do. Okay, now, but in Japan, you don't get reimbursed for doing procedures. You get reimbursed for giving drugs. So what do you think the Japanese do? The same patient, same problem, instead of going to the U.S. doctor, goes to a Japanese doctor, that person's going to get drugs. And so you see drug usage in Japan is through the roof, and hospitalization expenses in Japan are not as high in the U.S. So they hospitalize the patient and they give them drugs. People say that the perfect Japanese drug is one that you can give forever and does nothing, because that's what the doctors like to do. So here are 2 modern Western societies, pretty much similar diseases, not exactly the same, but the treatments are completely different, and I leave it to you whether it's economics or whether it's true medicine. Okay, capitation. What is this all about? This means that the government will come to a hospital. The government in the United States, although people don't like to acknowledge it, and many people don't understand it, the government is ultimately the buyer of health insurance. How does that work? It works because the government comes to the biggest hospitals and says to them, I am not going to pay the insurance company, I'm not going to reimburse the insurance company or recognize a payment by the insurance company for Medicaid and Medicare. Medicaid is that program which helps people who don't have money to pay for health insurance. This is pre-Obamacare. And Medicare is that program that pays for people who are over a certain age, I think it's 65. So the government pays for their health care. So the government really is fine. Now what do the insurance companies do? They just follow whatever the government does. So the government comes to a hospital and says, look, we're going to pay you $3,000 per catheterization, stent and catheterization. We don't care how much it costs. We don't care how much they charge you for the stent. We don't care how much the doctor charges you. This is what we're going to pay you. Per patient, $3,000. Go figure it out. So in some cases, the doctors simply do more cases. But in some cases, like, for example, gynecology, oncology, the government says we're going to pay you less than the market on the chemotherapy because you're going to make enough money on the procedure that you'll be able to cover the difference on chemotherapy. So the doctor's faced with this dilemma where basically the government's saying you have to subsidize the patient on the chemo, on the drugs, in order to get the patient in the first place to do the procedure. So you know the doctor's just going to up the price of the procedure, and But that's the way the game works. So that's government capitation. Again, if the government decides that they're going to pay X for the procedure that you've invented, that's what you're going to get. It doesn't matter how much it actually costs. You're going to have to figure out something with the doctors and so forth. And still, you're not at the finished point. Because there's something called post-market regulation. Okay, you've invented this great device. It's out there. It's working. Everybody's happy. Boom, something goes wrong. A patient dies, or a patient complains, or something happens, and that complaint gets to the FDA. And by the way, you as the purveyor, as the inventor of that device, have an affirmative obligation to report anything you know or should have known about the device failure or lack of full performance to the FDA. And the Sixth Amendment to the U.S. Constitution says no person shall be compelled to testify against himself or herself, but that doesn't apply here. If you know that something went wrong, you have to go, you have to effect full disclosure. And so you're faced in this moral dilemma because sometimes you know that the doctor was screwed up. And you know clearly the thing said, you know, this side up, and the doctor put it that side up. But it doesn't matter. You've got to go to the FDA. And should you not go to the FDA, you will be shut down and you will go to jail. And there's no question. So this is post-market regulation. What happens when something like this happens? Do you guys know the game of Monopoly? Where it says go back to square one, do not collect $200. That's what happens. You go back, you have to go through the FDA process all over again. And so this is basically lights out for your company. So are we seeing some light at the end of the tunnel? Yes. That's when if you get through that, then the good news is that you're actually going to get, now remember, but through this process you've had to raise lots of money. You're probably, if you were the founder, you're probably no longer in the company. It probably belongs to some venture capitalists and so forth. So we've come up with what we call Med 2.0, trying to figure out how can we do this faster, leaner, cheaper, and get everybody to the promised land without going through as many challenging, difficult hurdles. So what we do is we say, okay, let's find the inventor. So people know San Francisco science. They know that if they have an idea that they want to see get to the market quickly, and this is important, they are not desirous of running the company. We have lots of people who come to us and say, hey, I've got this great invention, and I want you to invest in it. And we say, go to the venture capitalist. That's not what we do. If we like it, we're going to take it. You'll be a shareholder, but you will not have control. You won't be on the board. You won't be able to tell us what to do, when to do it, how to sell it, whether to sell it. So you're going to basically be a scientist. You're not going to be a business person. And you know, doctors think, because their education is so rigorous, that they can do anything. They think they can be business people. They think they can be patent holders. They think they can do anything. Sometimes they're right. Most times they're wrong. So when we find a doctor or an engineer who says to us, I'm the inventor and I want to run the company, we say no. If you want us to do it, we have experience, we know how to do it, but we're going to do it our way. If they say yes, then we'll bring in a medical device engineer. And we have people we work with, and these are people who are fortunate enough that they don't have to charge us per hour. They're willing to defer income in exchange for stock in the company, knowing that we're going to get them to an exit fairly quickly, and so they'll get their payday. Now in America, it's a big deal because if this person gets paid a salary, they're going to pay usually 50% income tax on it. If they sell stock in the company, you're going to pay 15% tax on it, 1.5. So it's either getting the money now and paying 50 cents on every dollar, or getting the money a year from now, paying only 15%. So it's a big incentive for them to do that if they can afford to do it. Not everyone can afford to do it. So we bring in a medical device engineer, we hook up the inventor with a medical device engineer, and we bring in a patent lawyer. Again, patent lawyers can kill you, so we fortunately have worked out arrangements with patent lawyers where they also are willing to defer income, defer pay in exchange for stock in the company. We like that because if you don't do that, patent lawyers bill by the hour. Some patent lawyers, many patent lawyers, can bill $800, $1,000 an hour. And it is a very expensive way to pay for services. And that patent lawyer really doesn't have a stake in the game because they're getting paid by the hour whether they think you're going to get a patent or not. But if they know they're only going to get paid upon exit and upon you getting a valid patent, then their whole perspective changes, and then they're going to tell you that don't waste your time, or we can do it another way, or then they become your real partner in this venture. And then the entrepreneur can be anyone, just has to be someone who's basically prepared to wake up in the morning and get hit over the head with a sledgehammer and get back up again and do it all over again, right, until they get to the next one. But there are reasons for optimism because medical devices are still a very good business. If you can come up with a medical device and move it along, there's a lot of money out there, and there's a lot of opportunity. Now, I'm just going to skip this stuff, but India is a great place for entrepreneurs because you have what the United States has, which is basically one single market. And that is a huge, huge benefit. If you look at Italy, not Italy, but Europe, thinking of Italy because it's a good example of what happens in Europe, but if you look at Europe, even though they claim to be one market, they're really not one market. Each country and each region within each country has its own craziness, and you can't really have one distributor for all Europe. It's still the national or regional model. You don't have a single language. It's really like working in Babel. It's very hard for a small company to establish itself in Europe, very hard for a European entrepreneur. That's why you don't see European Bill Gates, because it's not as easy a market to grow a product in. It's a very split up, diffuse market. And I'm thinking of Italy because we had this medical device we were selling, and we wanted to bring a doctor from Milan down to Rome to give a lecture, and the Romans looked at us like, you out of your mind, nobody's going to come listen to a doctor from Milan. I mean, the Romans think the Milanese are German barbarians. They're not going to listen to these people. And similarly, from southern Italy, you're going to take someone from southern Italy to Milan, and they southern Italy, those people are Cretans, Mediterranean ne'er-do-wells. We're not going to listen to them. So you have that all over Europe. You have it in Germany, where the folks in Hamburg won't listen to the people in Swabia, and just everywhere. So, but you don't have that in the United States. In the United States, you go to a country, you have people from Alabama talking to people in New York and Washington, and it's because of the common language, because everybody's speaking at the same time. And here in India, your lingua franca is English, and the target markets you're going to want to get to all speak English, and that's a huge, huge benefit for an entrepreneur. Huge. So there's great opportunity here. Lots of wealthy people who can become acclimated to investing in startup companies, and great growth and business. And I will leave you, with questions. If anybody wants to ask questions or anything, or just talk to me later, I'm glad to provide that. Questions on this topic? I'm willing to stay for a while longer if people want to talk to me one-on-one, maybe, that share some thoughts or ideas, or it's entirely whatever you guys think.
Okay guys, that was Mr. Sanders, who gave us an insight into the medical technology industry, and we came to know about the challenges in this industry and how to overcome them. And I'm sure a lot of aspiring entrepreneurs amongst us have got a lot of pointers on how to convert the ideas to opportunities. But I want to caution guys, till the time you're not ready with your CEO innovative speech, take the steps. And SkyTran, what an amazing innovative company. Thank you, Mr. Sanders. I would now like to ask Mr. Harish to come and give a word of thanks to you.
Honorable guest, Mr. Jerry Sanders, respected Dr. Rai, Director of Institute of Management, faculty colleagues, and dear students. It is my privilege to have been asked to propose a vote of thanks on this occasion. I would like to thank Mr. Jerry Sanders for your valuable time and enlightening thoughts. We all are inspired by your great thoughts, sir. Thank you so very much. I would also like to thank the Talk team and all HCM students for all your efforts and make it happen. Thank you very much. Wish you all the best. Now I request Dr. Rai to present a memento to Mr. Sanders.
Jerry, thank you. Thank you.
Okay, let's have another big, humongous round of applause. To join us faculty members for the company. And I would also like to thank every one of you here. Have a nice day.